Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and here we are continuing our trip with Dan and Paul, starting out this video on Mount Sarah where we just stopped for our lunch stop. So we're heading from the Mount Sarah summit onto the Sarah Spur track, just turning right now onto that Sarah Spur track, and the plan from here is to head down the Sarah Spur, which is about 20 k's long, down to the Wongungarra River, up the other side of the Sarah Spur track, onto Brewery Creek Road, down to Talbotville. A little bit of a steep drop off there. You can see my rear bars scraped, and Dan has wisely opted to take the bypass route around that one. But yeah, up onto Brewery Creek Road, down to Talbotville, and then probably Crooked River track out from there. This particular part of Sarah Spur is always a bit soft and wet. You start off with these couple of little muddy sections, and then you get to a decent sort of bog hole section that is usually pretty wet. And we're just approaching that section now. So yeah, look, I've been here a few times, and it seems to be, no matter what time of year it is, there's always water sitting here. I don't know if there's a spring up on top here or what, but there's always water sitting here. So I have opted to drive the left-hand lane and left-hand line, and the car and the tracks have opted to steer me towards the right-hand line. So yeah, we're backing up. Yeah, look, it's always the left-hand line's just a bit more fun, a bit more mud. So yeah, I've decided to drive that line. Drove it last time I was here. And that sound that you just heard was something I was going to notice a little bit later. I didn't so much notice it right then. And yeah, just a small bog hole at the other end, and we're out. I reckon last time I was here it was probably a little bit softer and wetter than what it is this particular time. Dan has wisely opted for the right-hand lane, or right-hand line, to get less mud on his car. Still slippery enough in that first section. He's spanning the ruts there nicely, and opting just to get as far over as he can. I reckon last time we were here there were no ruts on this side pretty much. What started as a bit of a bypass route has certainly been worn in since I was here sort of 18 months ago or so. And he's just managed to skirt the edge of that tree nicely, and he is free and clear. And Paul's brought his FJ through on that same line, and he stayed nicely up on top of those ruts, spanning them. And just taking a straight line through there, barely got his toes wet. Making very short work of it. So from there, we do climb up to the top of the Sarah Spur track before beginning the very long descent. Long, steady climb up here. Traction's historically always been really good. It's not particularly loose or anything like that. And what a view when you get up here. You can see people have used this as a campsite, and why wouldn't you? The whole section of the high country here just opens up in front of you when you get up on top of this rise. I guess you wouldn't want to be up here on a windy night, but when the weather's good like this and it's nice and still, this is what the high country is all about, isn't it? Just mountains, hills as far as you can see. Just pausing there to take in the view before beginning the long descent. As I said, this track's nearly 20 kilometres long, and most of it is a ridgeline style track where you work your way down to the Wongungarra River. Varies in width. This starting section here is pretty wide. You can see it does drop off at the sides, but not just at the very edge of the track there. Now I've pulled up here because I'm hearing a noise from the front end, and if you're a long time watcher of the channel, you'll remember last time I was on this track, there's that noise. Last time I was on this track,
is it more centre?
We got just to the other side, and I actually did the transfer case. So call me a little bit paranoid. So Dan and Paul kindly pulled up and came down and sort of had a look and had a listen.
You're probably right. I reckon it's a stone or something that's just...
I'll check to see if that anti-rattle clip sits on the other side.
I reckon it's a stone or something that's just been flipped up in that bog hole back there. And
so yeah, as you just heard, the consensus was that it was probably a stone, probably stuck in the guard around the disc brakes, and probably nothing to worry about. And that proved to be true. The noise did persist for a little while, but by the time we were up on the helipad on the far side of the Sarah Spur, it was gone. So just call me a little bit paranoid. Past experience on this track, I think that was back in October of 2021, if I remember correctly. Coming through here with Bruce and his 200 and Mark and his Colorado, and yeah, we stopped for lunch on that trip down the bottom on the far side of the river crossing, and just after lunch when we got going, did the transfer case for the first time, and it was midnight or so by the time we got home. It was a long trip out, that's for sure. So not destined to happen this time. So if you want to see that video, I think I called that Sarah Spur disaster video or something, I can't remember. Time flies, it was a couple of years ago now. And yeah, as you can see, look, the track is in really pretty good condition, always has been. Only that boggy section right near the top there. The rest of this, you do make your way down here pretty sedately. There are some steeper sections towards the end, and it is a very long, steady descent. You do get the odd flat spot like this through it, but the last section in particular, you can just hear that stone making a little bit of noise. The last section in particular is fairly consistently down, so it is one of those tracks where you really want to be utilizing your low range and utilizing your engine braking, and not relying on the brakes in your car, because they will overheat. When we came through here with Mark and his Colorado, his brakes were just about overheated by the time he got to the bottom. So you really do want to utilize that low range gearing to keep the vehicle as slow and under control as you can, without having to rely on the brakes all the time. And you can see here, starting one of those long downward sections, and the car doesn't really get a lot of rest along this section of Sarah Spur from those really long descents, which is why if you're using those foot brakes, you will find that they will overheat. And the track varies a lot from you know, sections like this that are fairly enclosed to much more open sections with steeper drop-offs. Really is a nice drive along Sarah Spur. It's probably one of my favourite tracks, and a big part of the main way I get into Talbotville when I go there usually. So it probably gives you a better perspective here. You can see the track just disappearing ahead of us, working its way down to the bottom of the valley and the Wongungarra River. You can see the drop-off's a little closer on the edge through these sections here as well. And it just keeps going down. You do know that you're getting towards the bottom when the track actually turns. Probably a K or so before the very bottom of the track, there's a 180 where it doubles back on itself to turn you around and head down to the river. And you can see here we're getting closer, but still just working our way down. And this second half of the descent is really long and steady and consistent, as you're probably getting the picture watching this. And you do have quite a nice view while you're doing this as well, looking down towards the Crooked River Valley. And here in this section, you're just starting to get glimpses of the track on the other side where you're going to be heading up. Just at the end of that last frame, it came in. And you can just make out sections of it there, right at the left of frame, just there. It gives you some insight into where you're going to be heading. This bottom section's probably not in quite as good a condition as the section further up, but the traction's still good. It's just a little bit more uneven. And this is that switchback that I mentioned about earlier. So it's about a 180 degree turn as you double back on yourself and then head back down the side of the hill, sort of below the section of track that you've been on. And again, this is still a pretty steep descent here. You do know though, once you hit that corner, it's not too far to go to the bottom and the river at all. And this is the last corner here, a little bit off camber as you come around it. And there's the river down the bottom. So that's one thing with this track as well. You really don't have a large approach area to the river. The track kind of just ends at the bottom of the hill, and that's where the river is. Now, all the times I've been here, the river's been pretty easy to cross and not particularly deep, but I do know of people that have come down and elected not to cross the river due to just how high it was and how much it was flowing. And we did have a good little bit of a break there for everybody to sort of bunch up and try and let the brakes cool down, but you can see there the steam coming off my wheels. They're still far from cooled down, even though we stopped for several minutes. The exit on the other side is a little bit rocky and can be slippery, particularly when you've had a few vehicles drag some water up onto it. I think I picked the hard line and made it look more tricky than it was, throwing a few loose stones there. And Dan bringing the grey dingo across. That exit, taking it nice and steady, and Paul now bringing his FJ across as well. the high spots with his tyres and just driven straight up there. And when you get up around that corner, there is a bit of a camping area there, or stopping area at least. You could probably camp in there, and that was where we stopped for lunch on the last time that I came through this way. You just get a glimpse of it here from Dan's GoPro just on the right there. So from here it really is straight into it, and it's the exact opposite of what we've just had. It's a steady straight climb up to the helipad, and then from the helipad you go down and then you climb up again to Brewery Creek Road. There's not really any flat spots apart from the helipad on this side of the track. You can see a little bit off camber here, a little bit rocky. And you're sort of straight into a good solid climb. This side of Sarah Spur's really good fun to drive. Lots of opportunities for different lines through there, and yeah, it swings around and you start the main climb up to the helipad. As I said, it's pretty much the exact opposite of what we've just done. You're heading straight back up. This is a little bit loose and a little bit less traction than the other side, so throttle control and slow and steady is definitely the order of the day. Again, this kind of thing I'd be really intrigued to drive with the 76, particularly with the current tyres and no traction control or lockers. Not that I've got the lockers in for this section, just relying on the traction control really to do its thing, which it does well. And yeah, right about here, I think this hump is pretty much where the transfer case failed the first time. So that was, I think I had 85,000 Ks on the Pajero at that time, and yeah, that was right there, brought us to a grinding halt, and that was kind of that. At that time the wheels wouldn't turn at all, and Bruce was able to winch me backwards, and we broke something in the transfer case even more, and then I was able to drive out in all-wheel drive, but I didn't have low range. So you can imagine driving up this in high range all-wheel drive without the center diff locking, and without low range. It was the car was certainly working pretty hard. Yeah, nice sort of rocky section here. And it really does just keep going up and up and up. The key here is just maintain your throttle control and choose a good steady line, and don't get your wheels spinning, and try not to stop either. If you're going to stop on top of one of those humps, but not while you're midway through trying to climb the hill, that's for sure. You could well find if you stop on one of these hills, you may not have the traction that you need to get going again, and you might find yourself having to reverse back down to the last hump or little flat spot before you can get going again. You will find that your tyres will throw the odd stone out the back, so you don't want to follow too close behind each other on these sort of tracks either. And as we're getting up towards the helipad, it does get a little rockier and a little looser. I do think this upper section had been graded since the last time I was here though. It seems to be in a little bit better condition. Still something you want to be paying attention though when you're driving. You can see those exposed rock shelves there. they'll turn into probably some decent rock steps over time. Little bit of a rock step there as you're coming up. So the front end just bump its way up over it. Little bit of a reprieve here for a minute or two before continuing on. And we're on that final approach now up to the helipad. And once you get to the helipad here, it is a good opportunity to stop and take in the view and give the vehicles a little bit of a rest, because it really is a very solid climb from the Wongungarra River up to this helipad, without doubt. And this last section is no exception. And yeah, nice cleared area up on top of the hill here, making the emergency helipad. And yeah, so I pull up here, you can see the track. It heads up over that little hill, sort of straight in front of us, and then up to the right to that ridge line in the distance there. Here we are on the second half of Sarah Spur. We've got to go down that little hill and then up there over to Brewery Creek Road, which is up there. We're just parked on this little rise here, sort of a helipad maybe. And you can see, looking back over there, the other side of the Sarah Spur track that we just came down. And right down the bottom there, you can sort of make out the river. In the bottom of the valley there. And this is what we just came up. So didn't really get any external filming. This whole section is just really steep like this. I think that we're away, yeah, and just dropped out and stopped completely. So it's definitely on the other side, I think. So anyway, I was really hoping it wasn't the front wheel bearing, because I did those 10,000 k's ago. Oh. And even for me, wearing them out in 10,000 k's is a little quick. So yeah, loaded back up and beginning this short descent off the helipad. It really is a very short downhill section, and yeah, as you just saw on screen, look, those views just never get old. And yeah, short descent, and now we're climbing up to Brewery Creek Road. And again, you can see this section is just as steep as the earlier section, and yeah, it's proper steep, and it happens real quick. Say this a lot, but the camera really doesn't do this justice. It really is kind of just hang on and enjoy the ride. A small reprieve, and then as you come around this corner, you see you've got this small flat section before beginning the climb up to Brewery Creek Road. And yeah, before you know it, that's exactly where you are. You're on this climb and making your way up to Brewery Creek Road. Much like the earlier sections of the track, it's just a really steady climb. Now, I do think this has been graded since I was here in 2021. I remember this being a lot looser. And this is actually Brewery Creek Road right here. Different track on the other side there. Not for today. Haven't taken that one before, but we'll have to check it out sometime. But here we are on Brewery Creek Road, which then gives us a pretty good run back down to Talbotville, and you get some cracking views from Brewery Creek Road all the way down. Of course, you need to keep your eye on the road, but you certainly get to enjoy those views as well. A lot of sections where the bush on the side of the track opens up. You can see it is a pretty steep drop off on Brewery Creek Road here. So you definitely want to be paying attention and keep an eye out for oncoming traffic, that's for sure. Particularly on corners like this, you really want to be staying on that left hand side as you're heading into those corners, because you really can't know what's coming ahead of you. And you can see the track there working its way around the side of the hill, and this is a good example of the kind of views you get to enjoy along here. The whole valley sort of just opens up, and at times you'll get glimpses of the river down in the bottom of the valley there. Generally the Brewery Creek Road is in pretty good condition, and it's really something that is definitely high range driving, probably two-wheel drive driving really for most of it. It's just a long, steady, slow descent, not overly steep. I think right at the very end where you come into Talbotville, it's probably a little steeper. You can see a track. We've probably just got a glimpse of a track. I believe that's the Wonangatta Spur. And you certainly can make some good time along Brewery Creek Road. You don't want to go too fast, but you're certainly making a lot better time than you do on the tracks, that's for sure. And as much as you want to stop and enjoy the view, every time you take a corner, you get a new and different view of this part of the high country. And descending a little more directly here, fair indication you're getting close to Talbotville. And here we are at the Crooked River crossing into Talbotville. So that's the Crooked River track on the right hand side, and that was our planned exit. Dan had actually never been into Talbotville. I think Paul had been here before a time or two, so we decided, since we're here, we would take the time and just shoot across into Talbotville so Dan could check it out and probably plan some future trips. Again, brakes are nice and warm. Fairly shallow crossing today into Talbotville. It's a nice open campground, lots of area, lots of opportunities to get campsites along the river there. As you can see, everybody's sort of spread out down this end. There is a long drop toilet just there as well. And just up here, this is McMillan's Road, or the very start of McMillan's Road, which will take you up to the Dargo High Plains Road. And just up along here, maybe 500 metres out of the main campsite area, is the historic cemetery for Talbotville, dating back to when Talbotville was actually a township during the gold mining era. So we did just duck in up here. I haven't taken any footage of the cemetery on this trip because I have filmed that before. So check out my previous video in this area for that. And after checking out the cemetery there, we headed back to the crossing. So you can see the campground does extend down past the crossing as well, with some more campsites right on the river there. And we've come back to the same crossing at the bottom of Brewery Creek Road, and from here we're heading on to the Sarah Spur track. No, the Crooked River track. Sarah Spur on the brain. Crooked River track. So nicely signposted around here as well. Extra helpful if you really don't know where you're going. No wonder I have the HEMA HX2 running all the time. Probably get lost without it. And there are some campsites just on that side of the Crooked River as well. some of the land there is privately owned as well though, so you do need to keep an eye out for that. There's generally signs up indicating the privately owned portions, and the Crooked River track is definitely one of my favourite tracks to drive. You can see sections like this parallel the river nicely. You're actually quite close to the river as you work your way along it, and when you start seeing the track get a little wet, it's usually a fair indication that a river crossing's coming up. The first few are typically shallower, so my advice has always been, if you come out of Talbotville and the first one or two crossings seem a little deep, you probably don't want to proceed, because they only get deeper and wider. You can see through here, we could actually see the bottom pretty much all the way across. Certainly not nearly as deep as it has been other times when I've come through. And throughout the valley here, there's some private land holdings. You can see the house down there, so keep in mind you may come across stock, and not all the land is open for access. Certainly worse places to live than in this valley, that's for sure. And once again, we've rejoined the river on the other side now, of course, which is a pretty common theme for this track. You do cross from one side to the other quite a bit. And sections like this, it's not a particularly wide track either. So while there's overtaking opportunities, they're not everywhere. And not surprisingly, it's not too far along before we find ourselves at the next river crossing for the Crooked River track. As you can see, it's a little wider and also a little deeper than the last one. And with this one, you really do want to swing to the left, both to stay away from the tree and the branches there, and also the deeper sections. Basically, the further to the left you get, the less deep that crossing tends to be. Did pull up there and take the opportunity to film the guys coming across. So Paul's coming across in his FJ. Nice bow wave in front of it. You can see a little deeper than some of the crossings we've done previously on this trip, but still not up over the bottom or anything like that. And Dan bringing the Great Dingo across. Giving the bonnet a good wash there. Once again, everybody's across with no real issues, which is always a good thing. It really doesn't take much for things to go pretty wrong in a river crossing. A slightly different line, vehicles can easily get hung up. Not all vehicles have the same suspension and the same clearances, so just because your friend has driven across in front of you and driven the line fine doesn't always mean that's going to pan out that way for you. So it does pay attention, keep an eye out for any rocks, and have a plan for what you're going to do if somebody gets stuck in a river crossing. You can see here how tight this section of track is. People do bring camper trailers and vans along here. I don't know that I would do that. Maybe a small camper trailer, but certainly not a van. Certainly not heaps of room along this section for overtaking traffic coming the other way. And you can see you're right next to the river there, albeit elevated a little bit from the actual river. And this corner is particularly tight. You can see how narrow the track gets there, and you've got the rock face on the right hand side. I think the first time I drove Crooked River track, we did have a van behind us, in front of us rather, on that section, and I watched him. was pretty slow going. I watched him move the van around and nearly cleaned up a couple of the posts on the outside there, so yeah, very tight. And you will find the odd wet spot on the track through here as well, whether they're springs or just runoff, I'm not sure. And again, you start seeing water on the track like that, it's usually a fair sign you've got another crossing coming up. And again, I've definitely seen this one wider than what it is at the moment. So, and you can see the rocks on the right hand side there, so if you needed to, you could veer that way to get perhaps a shallower run. And this particular crossing, it always seems to be wet and muddy on this far side. It gives you a good idea of the depth there with Paul taking the FJ across. And Dan bringing the Grey Dingo. You can see, even though it's not super deep, there's certainly a fair bit of flow in the Crooked River, and there generally is, which is always something to take into account. And as I was saying, yeah, this side of that particular crossing always seems to turn into a bit of a bog hole. Again, I'm not sure why, there must be a spring or something here, but it always gets wet, soft and muddy. And this is probably a little bit more churned up and muddy than it was last time I was here. But fortunately, no real issues for us getting through on this particular day. And then from there we're continuing sort of southeast, following the Crooked River track, and just on the left there, that's Randall's track, which heads up towards the Dargo High Plains Road. There's a few tracks up the top there, meets up with the top of the Conway track as well. And as I said earlier, sections of the land through here are privately owned, so stock do graze from time to time, and this gate is pretty much always shut. So do expect that if you come along the Crooked River track, you're going to have to stop and get out and open the gate. And obviously, if you're in a group, make sure the last person through shuts the gate, or if you're by yourself, you're going to have to shut the gate after you drive through. And this gate is just before another river crossing. I dare say they're trying to stop the stock getting down to the river and getting into strife down there. So really important you leave those gates the way you found them. That one generally shut. And the other thing I noticed is you can see this lighter coloured stone here on the entrance and exit. I do think since the last time I'd come along Crooked River that parks or forestry had been in, and they've sort of repaired these entrances and exits a little bit, and they were certainly in better condition and more traction than when I was here last. This one in particular was dug out a little bit last time. It still is a little bit there, but not nearly as much as it was. So it certainly makes a difference when they go and do those remediation works to keep popular tracks like this in service. So if you run there for the FJ across, and short work for the Prado Grey Dingo as well. get any mud on the cars earlier. These river crossings certainly are washing it off, that's for sure. A little bit of a muddy section just this side of the track as well, but a few options at this stage at least to keep the tyres up out of the mud if you want to. And this is one of those sections where as soon as you finish one crossing, it's literally straight into the next one. This crossing is probably the one that used to have the trickiest exit on the far side when you're coming in this direction, but again, with these remediation works, with the stone and gravel having been put down, it's a whole different ball game. Quite a wide crossing this one too, comparatively. But yeah, this used to be a much more difficult climb up out of here, and it's a nice easy ramp just at the moment, so in really good condition. That makes a big difference to the overall experience and how hard or easy this particular section of Crooked River is. You can see there Paul and the FJ making short work of it. And Dan just lining up the grey dingo. Now this is pretty much the last crossing on the section of the Crooked River track from Talbotville through to Kingswell Bridge. You're a straight run from here to the bridge. And for me, this was probably the lowest the river's been when I've come along the Crooked River track. So when it's in these sort of conditions, it's a really good opportunity for you know, anyone to take these crossings on. So I think last time I drove, that might have been with Mark and Bruce after I did the transfer case. We came out this way. I feel like it was a bit deeper on that particular trip, and Mark didn't have a snorkel. He was taking it very steady in his Colorado to not get water up over the bonnet. And you can see there a nice farm on the right hand side. As I said earlier, certainly worse places to live, aren't there? And working our way along the Crooked River track here, you can see the river on the right hand side. And this section is again really a two-wheel drive road at this point. Once you get past that last crossing, it's really in quite good condition. And we're not too far here from the famous Kingswell Bridge. And again, still not a lot of room on the track here. Like, the track or the road is really easy to drive, but if you met traffic coming the other way, there's only a few spots where you would actually be able to get past each other with any degree of ease. Some of these corners are built up a little bit more, which is helpful. And yeah, generally when I've come along here, the water's up over those, so you can see those stones on the far side there. Generally it's been up over those. So very, very different. Now coming down here, those of you that know this part of the high country will know that before you get to the bridge, which you could probably just see in the distance there, there's the Conway track on the left hand side. Good fun track, nice steady climb up there as well. Before you get to the bridge, there is a crossing. It's probably the longest crossing of the Crooked River, and I have never done it before. Every time I've been here, the river's been too deep, too high, flowing too much, or there's been a bunch of people camped on the other side, and you really don't want to be that guy that drives through somebody's camp just because he wanted to drive through the river. So today was the perfect opportunity. No one camped on the far side, so we're not disturbing anybody. The river's certainly down, probably just about the lowest I've ever seen it. So if I was ever going to do it, now is the time. And you can see this is a little bit more churned up, a little bit softer and muddier, this entrance or exit depending which way you're going. And the exit is actually quite a ways down the river. So that tree that's in the foreground there, the exit's actually directly behind that. So you drive into the river, down the river, and then out the river. So yeah, I was pretty keen to give this one a go, just because I've never driven it. I've seen people drive it, but never driven it myself. So and as you see, this section of the river is probably just about the shallowest of any of the sections that we've crossed previously. Quite an odd feeling being out in the middle of the river, driving down the river like a highway. You can see the rocks there, so you can see the bottom. I mean, it's beautiful clear water, and that long shot gives you an idea of just how deep it isn't at this particular instance. And a few cows grazing on the far side there. And again, this entrance and exit has definitely been remediated somewhat by parks or the management. And yeah, you're in fairly short order, you're back up onto the Crooked River Road here. And Paul decided to take the opportunity as well and bring the FJ across. Yeah, he's making a good pace there. Does seem a little odd and unnecessary perhaps, driving through a river crossing when you've got a perfectly good bridge there in the background. But it's there, so why not drive it, and it's a good bit of fun. So that pretty much brings this one to a close. Heading back across the Kingswell Bridge and back towards the Dargo High Plains Road. I was actually heading down to Melbourne to visit my mum, who was in hospital at the time, and Paul and Dan continued their trip camping along the Upper Dargo River. And yeah, look, it's been a fantastic day out with these guys. It was a long, pretty solid day. Started very early in the day for me. I left Albury pretty early and really thoroughly enjoyed it, and cemented our plans here for Dan and I to do a bigger trip together over a few days. So keep an eye out for that coming to the channel. Like this video if you liked it, and please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what we do.